So to continue on, and I don't think I'll finish today because more things are coming in that I think are really important to share. So I wanted to read today the article by Rabbi Michael Lerner. He's in California. It's called Stop Shaming Trump Supporters. And so this is a way for us to understand the mentality or the way of thinking, the feelings and needs of some of the people who voted for Trump. Okay? So he wrote, "It turns out that shaming the supporters of Donald Trump is not a good political strategy." You know, we tend, when we don't like somebody, to shame them. Yeah. That usually doesn't make the person more cooperative. Yeah, it usually makes them more resentful and increases the friction. So that's what he's getting at. Though job loss and economic stagnation played a role in his victory, so did shame. As the principal investigator on a study of the middle class for the National Institute of Mental Health, I found that working people's stress is often intensified by shame at their failure to make it in what they thought is a meritocratic American economy. So we're taught, you know, if you try hard enough, you can be a Manhattan billionaire too. And so people feel shame when they don't, you know, the cards don't fall that way for them. The right has been very successful at persuading working people that they are vulnerable, not because they themselves have failed, but because of the selfishness of some other villain. African American, feminists, immigrants, Muslims, Jews, liberals, progressives, the list keeps growing. So what do we do when we're not successful? We feel shame. To alleviate the shame, what do? We blame others. And so he's saying the right has been encouraging this kind of view amongst those working people. Instead of challenging this ideology of shame, the left has buttressed it by blaming white people as a whole for slavery, genocide of the Native Americans, and a host of other sins, as though whiteness itself was something about which people ought to be ashamed. Yeah, but there's some truth in that. Okay. The rage many white working class people feel in response is rooted in the sense that once again, as has happened to them throughout their lives, they are being misunderstood. So they're being blamed for the attitudes and actions of their ancestors. So please understand what is happening here. Many Trump supporters very legitimately feel that it is they who have been facing an unfair reality. The upper 20% of income earners, many of them quite liberal and rightly committed to the defense of minorities and immigrants, also believe in the economic meritocracy and their own right to have so much more than those who are less fortunate. So the liberal elite. So while they may be progressives on issues of discrimination against the obvious victims of racism and sexism, they are blind to their own class privilege and to the hidden injuries of class that are internalized by much of the country as self-blame. Okay, now here it sounds like blaming the white liberals. It's a little bit too much of the above for me, but I think what he's getting at here is not only the upper class whites, but the working class whites have been blamed for, you know, privilege in general, just for being white. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. What I'm talking about is when people are blamed, they react in a certain way. Okay. The right's ability to portray liberals as elitists is further strengthened by the phobia towards religion that prevails in the left. Many religious people are drawn by the teachings of their tradition to humane values and caring about the oppressed. Yet they often find that liberal culture is hostile to religion of any sort, believing it is irrational and filled with hate. People on the left rarely open themselves to the possibility that there could be a spiritual crisis in society that plays a role in the lives of many who feel misunderstood and denigrated by the fancy intellectuals and radical activists. The left needs to stop ignoring people's inner pain and fear. The racism, sexism, and xenophobia used by Mr. Trump to advance his candidacy does not reveal an inherent malice in the majority of Americans. If the left could abandon all this shaming, but it's not, what I disagree with him is, it's not the left who's doing all the shaming. You know, the right elitists are doing the shaming too. In any case, okay, so if the shaming could be abandoned, it could rebuild its political base by helping Americans see that much of people's suffering is rooted in the hidden injuries of class and in the spiritual crisis that the global competitive marketplace generates. So the people's suffering rooted in class, that I definitely agree with. Whether you're white, black, purple, or pink, you know, there is this shaming of working class. Yeah. In terms of who's doing it, I think it's all of upper class, not just the upper class liberals or the upper class whites or whatever. That's just my personal opinion. Democrats need to become as conscious and articulate about the suffering caused by classism as we are about other forms of suffering. We need to reach out to Trump voters in a spirit of empathy and contrition. Only then can we help working class people understand that they do not live in a meritocracy, that their intuition that the system is rigged is correct. But it's not rigged by those whom they've been taught to blame, and that their pain and rage is legitimate. Okay? So personally speaking, I don't agree with his whole analysis, but I do agree with the last paragraph. Here he was speaking particularly to Democrats, but I think it applies to everybody. You know, to think about the suffering of classism, not just of racism and religious minority and ethnic minority and so on like that, but when you are in a class that is not respected and when you feel shame for not having made it because you thought this was a meritocracy and you know that you have a certain privilege because you're white, but you still didn't make it. You know, and that leaves some shame. And so to really understand the shame and the resentment that those people feel because they've been left out of the American dream. Yeah. So what's really strange is you would think that those people would join with all the minorities who have been left out of the American dream. Yeah. But no, you know, they've been told that, you know, it's the minority's fault because and it's so strange the way it works. If you're working class, yeah, and the working class dislike of many of like food stamps and, you know, aid to families, to poor families, they don't like that because that helps the people who are lower class than them. So you would think that they would be upset with the people who were the upper class because they had all the privilege and got all the money. But no, they've been taught to be upset with the lower class who takes their hard-earned taxes, even though they don't work, and who takes their jobs from them. Yeah, so it's a very upside down kind of analysis where you would think people's resentment would go, and it doesn't go where you think it would go. Okay? So regardless of where it came from, yeah, which we could debate forever, what I think is important here is understanding the pain of other people in society. And so those people who supported Trump, who thought that he was going to be or will be their savior and make everything well again, they're doing so because of some inner pain and shame and suffering. And so to understand that, and what if we can do something to remedy those conditions for them, then they would probably not support people like Trump. In any case, I have a feeling that, well, not a feeling, I doubt Trump is going to be able to reverse those things. He's not going to be able to bring back the steel industry in America and provide jobs because it vanished long ago. And that wasn't due to other minorities. It wasn't due to globalization. It was due to just the way the economy functions, because our economy now is not a manufacturing economy. It's a service economy. So telling these people that he's going to make more manufacturing jobs for them, how he's going to do that, good luck. Okay? And they will very probably wind up feeling quite hurt and angry at him, either after 2 years or after 4 years. That's my guess, okay? But I'm not here to be a political analyst, excuse me for straying into one. I'm here to be a Buddhist nun, and so to talk about people suffering and developing some sense of empathy and compassion for that suffering instead of shaming and blaming people. Okay. Now, in addition to thinking about the suffering of the working class people, white working class that supported Trump, there's also an email, from somebody. I don't know what race she is, and it doesn't really matter. Okay. So she says, "I'm sorry to bother you, but you've helped me find perspective before, and I really need your help now. I have been gradually losing my faith in humanity to the point of distraction. After this election, I have nothing left. I am terrified of the horrible things that can happen." I think a lot of people feel this way in the country right now. "I am horrified that such a horrible human being can be the President of the United States. I'm embarrassed, too, not just horrified, but embarrassed. When he goes to other countries, and everybody knows what he said about women and what he does to them, it's like, it's embarrassing that we would elect such a person as president. He has unleashed the truly evil in people. I'm afraid of how the Republican government will affect my mother. I care for my elderly mother. I know they want to abolish all social programs that help the poor, the sick, the elderly, children, handicapped persons. She includes veterans here, but that's not the case. They don't want to abolish programs for veterans. They have no interest in improving anyone's life but their own. They have no interest in cultures or religions other than their own, etc., etc. Okay, so here's the blaming mentality that I spoke about yesterday, that we really have to get beyond blaming. And with the meditation we did this morning, which we'll put on BBC, to really show how our prejudice is superimpositions put on other people. Okay, I'm afraid of what they will do. Many people are afraid, and rightly so. I am a single woman in my 50s with no children and not a lot of money, who takes care of my elderly mom. I'm scared. I resonated especially with guarding the mind, and to that I have added, given my tendencies, also to, oh, that's from another person. Okay, so let's stop here with this person here. So, yeah, you know, you can feel the pain of this person too, who's, you know, single, doesn't have a lot of money, no kids, no relative support system, who's caring for her elderly mom, who probably needs all sorts of extra care. So whether she's able to work or not, you know, whether she's able to get, you know, some other caregivers to help with her mom or not, we don't know. But without a big income, that can be quite difficult. Yeah. And so I think, you know, if we're going to have healing in this country, the people who were adverse to Trump need to feel the suffering of the people who voted for him. And the Trump supporters need to be aware of the suffering of the people who voted for Hillary as well, you know. So we need basically a big empathy campaign in this country and a compassionate campaign. And this is very important. I think that as a country we have to move beyond the blaming and move beyond the harsh language. Yeah, because that only creates more. Unfortunately, in the last 2 days, there's been a lot of hate crimes, for lack of better words, done for people of color and immigrants and so on. And this is at colleges, you know, at a lot of colleges, even at a high school. One high school, some of the students were walked through their cafeteria with Trump signs shouting white power. Yeah, I mean, just disgusting. At one of the universities in Texas, I think it was Texas State, they had a flyer of some people in fatigues with guns saying, now we can take our country back, you know, and there was some racial comment in it too. I forget what it was. And I received a letter also from a college professor at NYU, which I'll read tomorrow because otherwise it'll become too long today, but talking about what his students are going through. Because at NYU, outside the Muslim prayer room, somebody on the door of the Muslim prayer room, somebody wrote Trump. So there's all sorts of things going on in you know, in some people acting out their suffering by blaming others, okay, and doing these kinds of actions. And I think as a society, we have to stand up and say that this has no place in our country. It has no place in any country where there's people who try and live an ethical life. Whether you're religious or secular, it has nothing to do with that, you know. This kind of behavior has no place in it. There was a New York Times editorial saying as much, that Donald should declare that in no uncertain terms. Well, I could go on and on. I have to restrain myself. But you know, my point is, yeah, rather than blaming, rather than pointing out, you know, you, we have to look inside, correct our own mental state, get rid of our own bias and prejudice against different groups of people, yeah, and really reach out to others who are of different class or different race or different culture, whatever it is. Reach out in camaraderie. Yeah, my nephew's best friend is from Iran, He's dark-skinned, he's Muslim. His second best friend is from Indonesia. My nephew is blonde hair, blue-eyed. You know? So it's quite interesting. But his friends are devastated by the election. And I feel like even though I've met his friend, but I haven't met his friend's family, like I want to write them a letter. And I want to say, you're citizens of this country, you belong here. You know, I'll stand up for you for the little that I can, you know, whatever voice I have. So I think in addition to having compassion and reaching out on a personal level, I think it's very important that we act on issues that are important to us. Yeah, and instead of just saying, okay, Trump won the election, we sign it all off, he's going to destroy everything, I'm just going to sit and play video games and amuse myself because there's nothing else that's worthwhile. That's a ridiculous way to respond, you know. That's not what bodhisattvas do. Bodhisattvas don't say, I'm going to take my marbles and go home. Yeah. Bodhisattvas say, you know, I'm going to contribute what I can. I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to work for the causes that are important. And I'm not going to be intimidated, you know. And I'm going to support the people who need to be supported and support the causes that need to be supported. So I think that's, you know, if we want to become bodhisattvas, that's the kind of thing that we have to do, is hang in there when there's suffering, you know, and not just kind of, well, as long as the suffering doesn't touch me, you know, I'll stay out of it. Yeah, we can't do that. Okay? So call up our compassion and act on it. And in that way, we can have a positive effect on different policies, different causes, and eventually change happens. Okay. So let's offer our food.